And away we go.
Away we go. Thanks, Preston. So we'll begin allowing people into the webinar in just a moment, but knowing that we're recording, I'll say welcome, and early welcome to everyone. My name is Bonnie McDonald. I'm the president and CEO of Landmarks Illinois, and we're very excited for today's Snapshots lecture series, focusing on our big Innovation Award winner, the Cristo Rey St. Martin College Prep project in Waukegan. So we're going to start allowing people in. So welcome, everybody. We're going to take just a moment to ensure that our guests are coming into the webinar before we officially get started, and welcome our exciting panelists today. We have a full panel who have experienced this amazing transformational project, and we want to ensure that you hear from them. So I see we're at about 12:01. We have our folks still coming in, so we're going to give it just about 30 more seconds. And again, we are recording this as a webinar, so it will be available if you're watching this later on YouTube. I just want to say, and I'll repeat this a little bit later, that when it is posted on YouTube, that we do have the option of translation. If you would like to translate this into another language, that YouTube will allow you to do that. So this is a good time if you wanted to ensure translation into another language. All right, I think to ensure that we maximize our time, I would like to ensure that we get started at this point. So welcome everyone to our Snapshots lecture series. My name is Bonnie McDonald, and I'm very proud to be the president and CEO of Landmarks Illinois, and to welcome you to our monthly lecture series. And we're very excited for our guests today, who are presenting about the Cristo Rey St. Martin College Prep project in Waukegan. So you're going to hear about architect Juan Moreno's vision for adaptively reusing a former Kmart store as a big box location and turning it and transforming it into what has become, I think, a beacon for what a school can be for students who are studying, doing a work study program in the very creative model of the Cristo Rey St. Martin College Prep program. So this school's unique work study model provides affordable educational opportunities and professional mentoring to more than 400 students from predominantly minority families living in limited economic means. So you're going to hear from Preston Kendall, who's the president of Cristo Rey, who had a specific vision for this former retail store that now is the home of Cristo Rey. Preston wanted to reuse this 55,000 square foot building to create a state-of-the-art college-like campus that took inspiration from corporate offices to reflect the real-world work environment that the students would be entering into the future. So this adaptive reuse project received our highest award at the Landmarks Illinois Richard H. Driehaus Foundation Preservation Awards, which was held on October 22nd. It took home the Richard H. Driehaus Legacy Award for Innovation. Now, I'll be introducing our presenters very shortly, but first, I'd like to provide some context for why this project signifies the important new direction for the field of historic preservation. This was the 28th running of our annual awards program, and having a program that spans nearly 3 decades gives us a timeline that reflects both the evolution of our organization over its last 50 years, turned 50 this year, and also the changes that are occurring in the preservation field as a whole. Throughout the years, the focus of our work at Landmarks Illinois has moved beyond just the bricks and mortar of saving places. So in November of 2017, we incorporated 4 core values that reflect our mission, our culture, and our vision. And those 4 core values include innovation, education, stewardship, and empowering people and improving lives. We went beyond that in 2019, where we added the word people to our tagline, which had been people saving places. So now we talk about our work as people saving places for people, emphasizing that preservation efforts are transformative for people, for neighborhoods, and for communities. And in 2021, this year, earlier in April, Landmarks Illinois adopted a set of guiding principles, which serve as our code of conduct for how we operate as an organization. Now, we've included a link in the chat to the full set of our guiding principles, our values. You can find it on our website at the About Us tab. So look for that in the chat. But the 2 points that I wanted to bring up more fully about the guiding principles are vitally important for setting the table for today's discussion. That is, number one, our intentional work to be more inclusive, building a more welcoming organization for new and diverse communities that may have been overlooked or marginalized in preservation practice throughout the past. And second, Landmarks Illinois' commitment to examining preservation's role in fighting climate change and mitigating its effects, which includes acknowledging and celebrating design innovations that are centered on reuse. Now, our values and guiding principles influence all of our programs and our practices. And this year, we're part of the jury's process in criteria for selecting the preservation awards. So the 2021 award-winning projects go beyond the bricks and mortar, and they serve as models for what preservation can and should be, including economic development, job creation, providing equitable and affordable housing, also bringing awareness to Illinois' diverse history, which has oftentimes been undertold, and celebrating our state's cultural heritage. Now, in the case of Cristo Rey St. College Prep, this award-winning project expands the definition of preservation even further. It opens the door to the next preservation era, where what a community values is recognized, where no building is seen as overlooked for its reuse potential, and where inclusion, equity, and environmental sustainability are prioritized. Now, I'm delighted to introduce our presenters today, starting with Preston Kendall, who is the president of Cristo Rey St. College Prep, again, located in Waukegan, who is going to share his vision that he had for this former Kmart store. And he is going to be followed by the architect who made this transformation happen, Juan Moreno, who is with JGMA, along with recognizing his team, who transformed what was a blighted building poised for the landfill into a vibrant school that is a model today. So very briefly, I'd like to share that Preston Kendall was part of the 3-person leadership team that founded the original Cristo Rey Jesuit High School in Chicago in 1996. Preston was also part of the team that established the Cristo Rey Network to help replicate the high school's unique model for education, becoming its first full-time employee in 2004. Now, Juan Gabriel Moreno also joins us today, and Juan is the president and founder of Juan Gabriel Moreno Architects, otherwise known as JGMA, launching the firm in 2010 with the sole purpose of transforming Chicago's diverse communities through his architecture. Now, additionally, we're going to hear in very special, we're so excited to have with us today, Cristo Rey St. Senior Katrina Padilla, as well as Brizel Jimenez, now a relationship manager for the school's corporate work study program. So both of them will share how the school has changed the quality of the educational experience for students, the faculty, and the administration. Now, just a bit of Zoom housekeeping before we get started. I just wanted to say the presentation is being recorded, and as I mentioned at the beginning, it's going to be available on Landmarks Illinois' YouTube page, and at that time, you can translate this presentation into any language if you have English as a second language or want to practice another language. You will also have time for questions and answers at the very end of the program, so you can put your questions through the Q&A button, and Suzanne German, our Director of Reinvestment, will be tracking those and will present them to our presenters at the end of the program. So we're leaving time for Q&A. So I would like to welcome Preston, and to get him started with our conversation, just to ask him to share some background about the Cristo Rey Network and his vision for providing a different educational model. What is this work study program model? Tell us about the students and the former building that they occupied, and why a former Kmart. So Preston, back to you.
That's going to take all day. No, I'm very happy to be here, Bonnie. Thank you. Let's just start with our mission, and our mission is threefold at Cristo Rey St. Martin. It's getting our students to and through college, then through this corporate work study program, getting them work experienced in a professional work environment. And we're also a faith-based school. We take students of all faiths, but we want them to kind of explore, what do they believe? And I think equally as important, not only what you believe, but how are you living those beliefs out in your life and in your actions? And behind those are really, kind of the reasons that we have those three aspects to our mission. College is still the single best pathway for a young person coming from a low-income community to find upward economic mobility. It's still the single best way that you can do that. The work program exposes our students to professionals out in the world of work. They can explore careers, but they also build social capital. And of course, our faith component is really about having our students think about their future, but how their future how they can become agents for positive change in our world through their education and then into their careers. This is just a map. We are actually almost dead center in that map where the two pieces come together, but it just shows you this is our census tract, and 48% of the families in that tract are at or below the poverty limit. We can go to the next slide. Just a little bragging here. There are only 3 high schools in the contiguous communities of Waukegan and North Chicago. There's North Chicago Public High School, there's Waukegan Public High School, and Cristo Rey St. Martin. We have about 400 students. We're 400 on the nose right now. And if you look at the enrollments at the other schools, we represent about 7% of all the high school students in this area. And yet, of all the new bachelor's degrees being earned by individuals in this area, over 50%, over half are being earned. Those degrees are being earned by Cristo Rey St. Martin alumni. Next. So this is our old campus. We were renting this campus from the Archdiocese of Chicago. It was an old parish, old St. Joseph's Parish. So you can see in that picture, it had a church, it had a school building that was built for 200 grade school students. And by the time we left, we had 400 high school students packed in there. And you can see in the middle, that dark brown pieces, we brought in a couple of modular classrooms to supplement. But unfortunately, if you take a really close look at the church, it's a frame building with tar paper brick facade on it, and you can look at the roof there, and it's falling apart. So when I actually came up to the school in 2011, I came up a week after that building was condemned, and we had to board it up and could not use it anymore. So rather than finding more spaces to occupy, we were growing and having less area to fit in. But we were very much apart. You can see the different buildings there. We were occupying at the time 6 different buildings, including the modulars, and so just very siloed in many ways as a community, and having the students having to go outside between classes in the middle of January. So just gives you an idea. Next slide. These are some of the interior pictures. You can see on the left that every Friday we have an assembly. That's 3/4 of the students in the school, and we barely fit in the one public or mixed use space that we had. We called that space the Kappa Gemma Chapatorium because it provided every single use we could possibly have outside of a classroom happened in that space. And then on the right, that's the change of class. That's a change of class 7 times a day, every day at our old campus. And the one thing I have to tell you, in addition to that being, we're just packed in. One of our students said, "Mr. Kendall, maybe we should change the name of our sports team to the Sardines." But anyway, what I love about that picture is look at all the smiles. So we had a wonderful community. We were making do with what we had, but at a time when things could be very, very stressful, everybody is smiling. Next slide. So we happened upon the Kmart. We looked at about 90 different properties, and we were kind of shut out from a lot of properties because the mayor of Waukegan didn't want us to move into any area that was a TIF, a tax increment financing district. And what I found out very quickly is that almost all of Waukegan is a TIF. But we happened upon this Kmart, and we actually, were able to find the owner. Kmart was leasing it, and convinced the owner to sell it to us. So you can see the inside. That's what it looked like after we had just cleaned out everything we could. There was mold in the building, and as I mentioned before a little bit, all the tiles in the building were asbestos, and they were popping up. So we took out all the asbestos and cleaned the mold, and that's what it looked like. You can see on the lower right, that's the outside of the building, way back when, in black and white. And over there is just our principal and I. We would go over there and dream. Once we determined we were going to buy it, we'd go let ourselves in and talk. So. Next slide. So, you talk about my vision. My vision was, we've got a big building, and it just seemed to me it has a lot of possibilities. And I needed a place quickly for our students, because the old place was falling apart. So that's when I connected with Juan, and I said, Juan, don't you think we can do something with this? So it's more, we had necessity is the mother of invention. We had to move. We found this place. We thought it has to have some potential. We didn't want to see it go in a landfill. What can we do with it? And that's where Juan really came in. But you can see here some of the interior spaces. Wherever you see natural light, it was brought in, because a big box doesn't have natural light. Go to the next. And you can see the classrooms all have at least one wall of glass to borrow the light, but it's also very much a reflection of who we are as a community, as a school. We're very transparent, and learning. We've made learning a very much a communal activity. As I said, Juan's vision really came out of the charrettes that he did with our students, with our staff. And I have to tell you, when he came back with the concept, it reflected almost everything that we had talked about and heard about from those constituencies within Cristo Rey St. Martin. It was really an amazing listening that he did, and translation into the physical design. So, and as you mentioned, Bonnie, I told Juan, one of the things I said, besides I want natural light, is I said, our kids go to work every week in professional environments, and they're all going to go to college. So we don't want a high school. We want a cross between a corporate headquarters and a college campus. And I think Juan captured that. There's last picture, our gym, and we opened a little coffee shop in there to teach entrepreneurism. So just kind of everything we could possibly dream of having as a high school.
Preston, thank you very much. And these photos just show what an inspirational space this must be to be in. And I want to move the offices of Landmarks Illinois in there. So as many who are seeing this, I'm sure do. So while we're transitioning over to Juan's slides, I'm pleased to introduce Juan Gabriel Moreno, who is as I mentioned, the president and founder of JGMA, which is the architecture and design firm located here in Chicago. But just to say that this project is not the only transformation that Juan has done. He's worked with several existing buildings, and I think this approach of community engagement, engaging the students, is pretty quintessential to your process, Juan, and we'd love to hear more about that. And this project, we're looking forward to hearing how you approached this, and was there any unique way you needed to approach it? And then also, how did this project transform you in the process?
Thanks, Bonnie. And I think for everyone listening, this is kind of where I take it from that phone call back in the day that I got from Preston saying, Juan, I've got an idea, and where does it go? And where do you take that? And I think it's great to look back at those photos of the former location, because that in essence was the first time that I met Preston was there. So you get a sense for the amazing accomplishments in such compromised space. And you begin to start thinking about, well, what would be possible if the students and the faculty alike were given a space where they could really celebrate education in so much of what they do. So what I'd like to share in that story is, you know, when, all kidding aside, when you do get a call from Preston Kendall saying, I'm standing in front of this Kmart, can you come out here? I've got an idea. You begin to understand that, you know, this dilemma of big boxes is not exclusive to Waukegan, Illinois. It's something that's, you know, as many of us know, happening throughout the nation. And, you know, what is it that can be done that doesn't include the subject of raising? And I think the other aspects we began to realize when we were looking at the former Sears, or excuse me, Kmart, is that, you know, it's been sitting empty for a while, and that emptiness starts to have negative impacts on a community. So not only was this a chance to really rethink what you do with the big box, but like, how do you reestablish, you know, momentum in a community that deserves it, momentum that shows that development can happen, that there are organizations and individuals that do believe in the community, so that emptiness that occurred for many years, you know, can change and be talked of in a positive light. The next component that, you know, we had to think about, you have this large sandbox within to play with, but it does not have light. And we know the importance of daylight in education. And so, you know, looking at this big box that is off a major thoroughfare, Belvedere Road, you know, there's the ideas of how do you start to think about, you know, organizing the spaces, and Preston made reference to a lot of the charrettes that we had with the youth and the staff, that many talked about just absence of light in their current spaces, but the importance of it. And so we did these studies that just started to look at, you know, if you were to put all the classrooms in this building and line them on the existing walls, you know, even doing that as an exercise, is there enough daylight that's possible? And there wasn't. So then I think the next part of this exploration is that, how do you start to invent more opportunities for daylight? And this idea that you can start slicing through the building and creating moments for daylight within. There are other aspects to this that really work well, because as we learned, as we got to know this site really well, there's a natural wetland to the north of the building. The north of the building was never considered an amenity by Kmart, because that's essentially where all the waste was handled. That's where all the deliveries and the trucks came. It was very much a back of a building, but I think this opportunity to slice through the building then allowed us to start thinking about connecting to nature and what that could be down the road. So that played a significant role in our thoughts. So again, as we were really investigating this notion of daylight within the existing building, and then saying, how can we start to break this apart into digestible parts, started to help us think about also a very, very important element that was brought up in the charrettes, and it's the idea of school identity and elements that are so critical, like school spirit. And how could we then start to overlay that into our thought processes? So the school colors are blue and yellow. It's in the branding of everything they do. So as we started to look at it, you know, certainly we wanted to apply that as part of this exploration, but what happens when blue and yellow come together and those gradients create a hue of green? Well, that can be seen in the way that we started to explore this holistically. The the elements of identity, we felt it was critical that it wasn't just something that was going to be seen on the exterior. I think it needed to be felt on the inside more than anything else. And, you know, the project was a two-phase project where you saw some of the images that Preston shared with you, where most recently, the gymnasium was complete. But you can even see in this diagram how that notion of identity is always meant to be felt by the students and the staff throughout. And then programmatically, you can get a sense just for the thoughts of organizing the spaces, the classroom spaces, the gathering spaces. And interestingly, in those areas where we do have the slices that are cut through, and you'll see it in some of the photography, that was also a key programmatic moment where we could have gathering for the student body to within that space below, or almost the void below. And then, you know, the composite of what that could be like just in vision. So then, as we started to look at this on the exterior, this notion of the gradient going from blue to the yellow, you know, how could that then manifest itself into a composition for the entire facade? And I think this is really critical as well, because one is that in many of these conversations with the youth, and I talk about this openly, this youth is constantly hearing about the millions and millions of dollars that are spent on high schools in the North Shore, and how they're constantly asked to go see this new high school that's been built on the North Shore. And this is not a project that had an endless budget, but it had endless vision, and the impact is, it's hard to put a number on it, on what it's had, but we felt it important that the students who thought, oh, the other North Shore schools get a brand new building and we're going into a former Kmart, that is something psychologically that we had to confront straight on, head on. And it's that, you know what, this is a chance to not only reinvest in community, but it's also given this school a chance to be a role model across the nation. And I'm grateful because Preston and his staff give me the opportunity to come up and speak to every incoming freshman class and talk specifically about the building so they understand the history and what it is they're walking into. And I love to proudly tell them, and it's important, and I'm not placating Landmark, Illinois, but when I speak to the students, I start going through a list of all the awards that this building has won. That will include the Driehaus House Award that we won from Landmarks, Illinois. But I want the students to understand that they're walking into a special space, that there are a lot of people that believed in them to even get to this point that they can have a new building. And I do talk about it as a new building, not a used building. And I think that's important because I like to share with them that, you know, there's no other high school in the North Shore that's won as many awards as this project. And that's not a JGMA thing that I'm sharing. This is for the students so they understand how important their building is. And then from the exterior transformation, you know, the big boxes, their typology is very similar. They are a box, but they're set back away from the street, and there's a sea of parking in the front. And you want to, you know, when you're creating change, you want change to be felt for the users, but also the community. So that's part of what we did in this setting up an identity to the exterior. And the building is, even though it's set back, you can feel it as you drive by. And then this notion of this connection and processional connection, from you walk in, you can see through this glass, and although it's not as clear, but you can see all the way to the wetland. and having that connectivity throughout was something that was critical in the way that we thought about all aspects of the building. Equally, as we shared on the interior, there is the importance of the school spirit and identity. But I think when I went to visit the building with Preston the first time, I think the thing that had the greatest impact for me was this moment of this photograph. And, you know, when you start out with a new school, and let's say you had a white canvas, you don't have opportunities for spatial volume that you have with these big boxes. And I think that kind of opportunity was something that was really exciting for all of us, of what that could do to impact the feeling of a building within. And to be able to go from that to have these slices that you saw through that let natural light in, that become these wonderful gathering spaces for the student body. And also, you know, you can get a sense here in the classrooms, just the quality of light within the space and what that learning environment can be for all of them. Even in the benign spaces in education, which can be the areas of lockers, right? Even those, you can see that up in the ceiling, they're still marked by daylight. There's still a quality of that space. There's still community within the student body that occurs in these spaces. And that's something that was very important for us to instill for all the students. I also think, you know, Preston brought up a really, really important point. And that was, we all had to get away from talking about this as a high school. This was really about campus and talking about a stepping stone to higher education for them, and let it be the continuum of momentum for these students with their educational dreams. And so when we talk about the spaces within and these classrooms, you know, we try to draw parallels to higher education examples for all of them. And then as was noted, the second phase that was recently completed, the gymnasium, that again, it reinforces everything that we've been discussing about school spirit and community. And, you know, for me, you know, this photo will always be my favorite, the grand opening on, it was a February 13th. It was wonderful for me for all the obvious reasons that all of you are seeing in this photo, but I remember that day very well because I wanted to be up there. It was interesting that, you know, the students didn't get a chance to see the building before the grand opening. Certainly they could see it from the outside, but not inside. And I drove up early and I just sat in the parking lot because I got there way too early. But it was interesting because the families were driving through the parking lot, parents and children looking at the building, looking through the glass. There was an excitement that was created that was really beautiful to witness. And, you know, to this day, when I go up there, I feel that now. What's been interesting for us at JGMA is that, you know, when we ventured down this path of the transformation of the big box, we didn't know how it would influence other projects that we work on or other phone calls you get. But one of those that we did is a mall in Florida. It's in an area near West Palm Beach called Wellington Green. And one of the big boxes in this mall is essentially 2 levels of furniture store. Well, one of the furniture store big boxes was closing. What we were asked to do was turn it into an entertainment district, and having the Cristo Rey project as an example of what you can do to a big box, not only won us the job, but just it also helped us show what's possible. equally, the idea of, what human beings can feel, and we talk about the community in Waukegan and feeling something different. This new entry was the former loading dock and trash enclosure area for the mall. So you're dealing with a similar, you can see it here, it's the psychology of what used to be the real back end of a building, and how do you turn it into what is meant to be the new entry for this entertainment district of, theaters and restaurants, so on and so forth, and change, the feeling of a community that thought about a building differently. And then the last one I want to share with you is closer to home in Springfield, Illinois. We're working on a project that is the interior demolition phase is going to start here any day, but it is the headquarters for the EPA in Illinois. And here you have the same typology, the big box, the Sears in a mall, abandoned, sitting there empty, similar conversation about the scars that this puts on a community when they see that emptiness. Well, this is less than 200,000 square feet of single and two-story building that now will become the home for over 700 EPA employees and other departments as well. But it is wonderful to see how, again, going all the way back up to Waukegan, Illinois, and showing what's possible, that you don't have to subtract in order to move forward, that you can use the existing as this springboard. And in this particular case for us, it's the idea that there's a rhythm and structure that we can use to our advantage, the rigor of a 30-foot bay, that this can set up the cues for everything that we want to do, and organizing a building, creating a sense of entry, having a presence of its own that feels distinct from the mall itself, and remembering that this is the place of work of over 700 individuals. And again, I think the idea is going all the way back to Cristo Rey, and the idea that we were talking about creating corporate professional settings in that school played a role in the way that we're thinking about this one, that the building is there, it's absence of daylight, same conversation. How do you then, bring appropriate amounts of natural light into a workspace and create a place that is dignified and people feel good about coming to work and having sense of, sincere procession into a building so that you understand where entries are. That is, I think another great example of the story continuing in a beautiful way of how going all the way back to Waukegan, it's having impacts and ripple effects, not just in Illinois, but throughout the US. So, thanks, everyone.
Juan, thank you. That was an amazing number of examples of how Cristo Rey is setting the bar for other communities. And Preston, I believe we're coming back to you so that we can hear from Brisel and Katrina as well.
Great. I do want to say that after we were about a week in the building, I was talking to some of our students. They're two girls, and I said, so, what do you think? We've been in here 2 weeks now. What do you think? She said, Mr. Kendall, I know we've only been in here 2 weeks, but sometimes it feels like we've always been in here. And I think that's a testament to, like I said earlier, how well Juan and his team really listened to us as a client and a community. And so I think I should shut up, and I would love to hear from Brisel. Brisel's an alumna of Cristo Rey St. Martin, went and got her college degree, and now is back working for us in our corporate work study program. And Katrina is a current student. So do you guys have any general comments you want to make? Do you want to do maybe Brisel, you could talk for sure about the old school versus the new school. What kind of, what strikes you as some of the big differences?
Oh yeah. Well, I think when I first saw the news, I was very emotional. And I think to this day, when I see pictures of the old high school, and I just think of how Cristo Rey has always deserved a place like this. And now we have it. And now I'm working here, and now I could see students happy. And I think as a student in the old building, I was always happy with the people I was with, that I didn't realize, you know, how much of a dump it was, but it wasn't for me. For me, it was like a very special place. And so now, you know, as I'm working with students, they get to feel, you know, they get to visualize everything that Cristo Rey is. So it kind of just matches, you know, who we are, I think. So about the old building, I think I graduated from Cristo Rey 2015. And so I was, you know, I started my freshman year there, and there were always, you know, different things going on, you know, with the building, but I think we always just made it work. And so now I feel very blessed to be here and to be working in the work study program. I think it really matches that corporate level, you know, energy too. So
yeah, I definitely feel the same. I didn't ever actually go to school in the old building, but all of my sisters went to school in the old building. And I remember entering that school as this, you know, small little 5-year-old girl just trying to take lunch to her sister. And it definitely did have its problems. It served its great purpose, but it definitely did have its problems. And now I see this new building, and every time I drive into the parking lot, I just see all of those bright colors, and it reminds me of, it's just so inspiring because it reminds me, like, I got this. And like Mr. Moreno said, there were a lot of people that supported us and believed in us. And that is why we are so fortunate to get this building. And I love that because, you know, when I'm doing my very difficult AP calculus work, the bright lights from the sun roofs, it just comes in and it reminds me that things are brighter and that it is possible. And it's just, to me, it's a sign of hope, and inspires me to keep going on no matter the difficulties.
Well, we thank you very much for your firsthand experiences and knowledge of this, you know, of this project, all of you. And this lecture is really to enable people to ask you specific questions about how this work aligns with, or you know, how it's a departure from a traditional sense of historic preservation. So for, you know, for those who think about preservation in a way of the quote unquote beautiful building, that's often what we hear, is that preservation is about a, you know, 100-year-old space, and it's a sort of traditional sense of beauty, and that is all it is meant to be. And our work at Landmarks Illinois is trying to break the barrier of that perception, because we think preservation is much more than that. And this project speaks to it from the sense of that no space is a throwaway, because it can house the lives of people, and it's the people that make a space what it is, that, you know, that their lives and the time that they spend in it is why it was built in the first place, and that they can be transformed into something that is new, you know, that is adaptive reuse, and also, as you've proven here, you know, is an effort to fight climate change and mitigate climate change by preventing all that would have been wasted here from going into a landfill. So with that idea, new idea, if we can say it that way, about preservation and what you're setting forward, you know, what do you envision as, you know, as perhaps the next era, how you would define this work of preservation? So, you know, thinking about the way that people use this space, do you think they would ever consider themselves to be preservationists, for, you know, just to start out, for any of you?
I don't know. I used to say that our building was the biggest recycling project in Waukegan, And there is that element to, here is a looking at it as an asset, and rather than the typical, our society looks at it's more throwaway, right? And so they look at it, it's been derelict for several years, so let's just get rid of it. I think it's about seeing potential. And, it's the same thing we do with our students. We see so much potential. I remember a student said one time to a senior said to a freshman, the teachers at Cristo Rey St. sometimes they see more potential in you than you see in yourself. And I think that we kind of just applied that same human value, and we looked at this as an asset and what can we do about it. I do know that people in the community keep coming over and saying, I remember shopping in the Walmart. I cannot believe that what you've done to this place. It's unbelievable. So as long as that memory persists, I think people definitely remember this, but it's a completely different use. So when you think preservation is preserving something, this is it gets back to that innovation piece. It's really more about looking at, we had a need, we were a community, that I used to say at the old school, success in a school is all about relationships. And I would tell our principal, I said, and we are living proof of it, because that's all we have. We don't have anything else. We only have relationships. Well, now we have this beautiful building, but really the way it's designed and the way we occupy it, all it's doing is providing a platform, as Bracel said, worthy of the members of our community to continue those kinds of quality relationships.
Yes. I would, again, this is to all of you, and I see we do have some questions, so I'll certainly get to those. I'm curious if you think this has helped any of the administrators, the board members, the students, maybe to look at another place in a different way. I don't know if you've heard any stories about that, about looking at things in the community in a new way as an inspiration. Have any of you heard stories about that or thought differently yourselves?
Well, that's interesting. There's a charter school group up here called Learn Charter, and they're looking at a big box a couple of miles north of here as a potential new campus. So it's definitely, and they've been here to visit, and we have some of their K through 8, and we have a number of their graduates coming to our school. So I think that's there. The Ray Bradbury Museum opened up in downtown Waukegan in an old storefront, and they have plans to redo it and turn it into a state-of-the-art museum. So yeah, there's a few things there. I think that people are, there's a lot of abandoned storefronts in Waukegan, unfortunately, but I have seen a couple of signs popping up now that say this isn't empty, it's full of potential. So in the window.
Bonnie, if I were to take that on a little bit of a tangent, but it's the same subject, is that a lot of the youth there never thinks about architecture, engineering, construction. And I think this has also been able to instill a potential of these careers that they're tangible. Like, I say this all the time, and it shouldn't be this way, but when we go into a community like Waukegan, it's the first time that they're ever speaking to an architect. And it shouldn't be that way, right? And so it's wonderful. I have a great example in our office of an alum from Cristo Rey that had these feelings about studying architecture, right? But her confidence was zero. And yet the desire was there. And now she's gone on not only to get her undergraduate, but her graduate degree from UIC, and she's working here. I mean, I think these kind of stories are what plant the seeds of possibilities in other ways. And it's great. Like, I was up talking to Preston a couple of weeks ago and talking to some of the students, and it was like, one of them heard, and Preston, you'll probably tell this story better, but heard that the architect was in the building. And she went out of her way to find which conference room I was sitting in, because she wanted to talk to the architect. And sure enough, she's thinking about architecture. So I've been able to work out an arrangement with Preston where she's going to ride in on the Waukegan train with the former alum that still lives in Waukegan, now to see what architecture is about, to see if there's, you know, a potential future for her there. So like, these are just like incredible stories, right?
Mhm. You know, Juan, that reminds me of a person in your own firm, in your own office, Emilio Padilla, who is on the board of Landmarks Illinois, and talks about the architect Catherine Baker coming into his school and talking about the possibility of being an architect, and that you can't be it if you can't see it, right? That's the principle. And so being there and being present and showing the possibilities is key, especially when, you know, obviously less than 5%, if not 3% of architects are women of color and people of color. Mm-hmm. So, yes. Let me go to, we have a couple of questions coming in. One, which is, Juan, I think is for you, from one of our members saying, interesting project. Did you incorporate bird-friendly glass on the windows? So all of that glass that's in there, and that being next to a wetland.
Yeah, the glass that's on the north facade, because those are taller expanses, and because we do know, like, one is you want to connect to nature visually, but it creates issues with birds. But yes, we did. That's a big part of what we do as well.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you. We also have a question, you know, more accolades coming in for all of you. Creative reuse of this building is so inspiring. The vast parking lot, question mark. So is it filled during class hours? Can it be plowed up and restored to nature? Creative reuse of parking lots could also be an inspiration too. So any one of you can answer that.
Preston, this is so
yes, absolutely. This is, you're talking about the next phase for us, is to really look outside, and we're looking at how we can green more of this, how we can tear up this non-permeable surface and make it permeable again. That'll help with flooding and everything else. So yeah, we're looking at it. I will tell you right now that given what's transpired with the pandemic, that giant parking lot was a godsend. We any given day, the majority of our kids don't have cars. They're not driving. They're getting dropped off. So there's very few cars other than the staff in the parking lot at any given time. But during COVID, this last year, we partnered with Northern Illinois Food Bank, and we used that. And as a matter of fact, we're doing it this afternoon. We're giving out food. Last year, we gave our students and staff volunteered and gave out over 1.5 million meals to people suffering from the pandemic, and people are still coming. It's not over yet, and you know, certain places like Waukegan have been hit very hard by the fallout from this pandemic, and so that continues. So I thank God that we had the huge parking lot, because it enabled us to do that. And we've also been working with Lovell VA and Naval Station Great Lakes, and been running, in the spring, we ran vaccine clinics for active duty and their families and veterans and their caregivers. Gave over 5,000 fully, you have to have 2 clinics for each person, but 5,000 people. And we're right now on the weekends working with them and running booster clinics. So that's been a gift, but definitely forward looking. We definitely want to look at how we can green that. We're also, I'll throw in, we have an application in, and we're trying to put a solar array up on the roof.
Mm-hmm. The inspiration continues, Preston. So, wow. And I would presume at the former campus, this would not have been possible to orchestrate vaccine clinics and a food bank with the limited space that you had. So again, Cristo Rey at the center of the community, it seems.
Well, if we were at the old space, even with distancing, we never would have been able to have in-person learning during the pandemic at all. So yeah, this has been a godsend in many ways.
Yes. We have another question for you, Juan, this one to you. Can you talk about the potential for residential reuse with big boxes?
So we're hearing that more and more, right? I think it's possible, because I think the box it's a different kind of canvas, right? And I think you have to, there's similar challenges, right? In that, the spaces in residential merit daylight, they merit views. So there's still, you know, an exploration of how you start to carve it up, so on and so forth. But yes, absolutely. It's absolutely possible, and it's happening now.
Mhm.
Because that's one of the project types that are starting to go into the big boxes that we're seeing.
I think there's some poetry in the fact that the EPA is reusing a big box store and is doing that in a sustainable way. Hopefully they see it as a sustainable way.
Absolutely. You know, and I think it played a role in their decision to go in there, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So Juan, is that a whole new industry for you? Is basically big box reuse?
I never in my wildest dreams, going back to that phone call from Preston Kendall, did I think that was going to lead to other business. But I do think that, you know, as our industry is changing and we have to adapt to it, like this is one of the typologies that's out there, and we have to give it sincere consideration. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. We have another question, and perhaps this would be for Katrina, Brissel, or Preston, that, going beyond what this means to Cristo Rey, the network, the student body, what did this project mean for the city of Waukegan itself? So, the impact it has had, outside of beyond the school.
Brissel,
I can
or
take half of
Katrina,
it, and we get to go halfsies on this one. Katrina, do you want to answer it, and then I can?
Yeah, for sure. So when I would drive by, when this was just a vacant Kmart, it just looked so gray and so hopeless, and it just looked very almost depressing to look at it. And it's right on Belvedere Road, so it's you pass by it a lot. And then now, as I was talking about earlier, I come in through the parking lot, or on my travels, I pass by it, and it's just so full of colors, so full of light. It's kind of re-energized, I would say, the community. And even at night, with all of the lights and all of the color, it's just so beautiful. And for me to pass by it, it definitely makes my heart happy. It makes me very, very happy to see it.
Brissel, would you like to add?
Yeah, of course. So for me, I think I've always heard Waukegan is like nicknamed the city of progress, but I never knew who the progress is for. I never saw anything. So I think Cristo Rey is definitely it. I think it's the start of conversation. I think as soon as you enter Waukegan, you see Cristo Rey is like on Belvedere. So as you're entering from Gurney or wherever you're coming from, it's like it's there. And so it really opens up the conversation for even like actual progress and sustainable progress, I think. So I've been pretty, invested into like what's going on in Waukegan. My mom actually owns a restaurant that she's been having for about 10 years. And so us being able to partner with Cristo Rey and being able to like work with the community, I think that is, I think it's becoming more and more, more and more common for Waukegan to grow in a way that Cristo Rey kind of planted, I think. So for me, Cristo Rey is like the start of actual change, and it's including our communities and communities that actually live here. So that's what's, I think, the most exciting part about Waukegan, growing with Cristo Rey.
Mm-hmm. That's a wonderful, I think a wonderful punctuation to this. And we have one more question, which actually is to Landmarks Illinois. So allow me just a moment to answer. The question is how we at Landmarks Illinois think about traditional building preservation, which I was mentioning before, and this concept, this new idea of big box preservation, so to speak. And I've already talked about the transformation of our thinking over the last decade about people are at the center of preservation. And oftentimes it's thought of as the building. But when we put people at the center, we think about preservation very differently. And Brisel, you were just mentioning, I think, the important question of who benefits, right? Who is benefiting from these projects? Is it the surrounding community? Is it the developer? Is it all of the above? And that is a question we are now thinking about as well. Beyond that, how is this work relevant? So we are thinking quite a bit about the future, being a 50-year-old organization. What do we need to be 50 years in the future to ensure in a country that has more and more big box stores and we don't have materials to waste? How do we create spaces that people need? From supportive and affordable housing to to educational opportunities, the things that people need in their lives. That it's not just about the beautiful building and preserving it for beauty's sake. It's how does it contribute to the quality of life, to job creation, to the community and economic development that we need. That's when preservation will become relevant to a much, much broader audience, and that people see themselves in the work. So I just want to say, I think that as we expand, this project is so emblematic of the future, and we thank all of you for this tremendous job that you have done. 10 years in the making. It's a labor of love, and we're so happy to have Katrina, that you're benefiting from this, and to hear your voice today. To Brisel and Preston for taking your time, and of course to Juan for all of the generous time that you've given us today. We are so appreciative of this and hope we can continue to tell the story in different ways to more people. So I would like to thank everybody who's joined us today, and continue to invite you to engage with this work that we're talking about with Landmarks Illinois, and how we're working to work together with people to bring new ideas of preservation to the table. One of those is the adaptive reuse of the old Cook County Hospital in Chicago. One of our labors of love, 20 years in the making, as we worked to ensure this building was preserved so that it could be adaptively reused. So we have an event there on November 30th. You can watch our website at landmarks.org for more information about this event through our Real Estate and Building Industries Council there on November 30th. And I also would like to thank everybody who's a member of Landmarks Illinois and our annual corporate sponsors as well. Like Cristo Rey, we are a nonprofit organization, and we depend on people's generosity and investment in our work to do the grant making and advocacy services that make many of these properties and adaptive reuses possible. So I'm sure, Preston, you would want us to say the same. So, don't donate to the work of course, of Cristo Rey and Landmarks Illinois. And thank you very much. This will be available on our YouTube page. Please share it with others, and ensure that they know what's possible when we just put our minds to it. So thank you, everybody. And we hope you have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Bonnie.